You're listening to the International Moving Podcast, your guide to moving to another country, brought to you by SDC International Shipping, LA's finest. An international move is exciting. It's a time to start over, establish a new business maybe, reestablish family ties, or retire where your budget will do more for you. Please enjoy today's episode, and if you have any questions about your international move, give us a call at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962. Hey everyone, this is Jim for SDC International Shipping. Welcome back. I am your host for the International Moving Podcast. Glad to have you with me today. We're going to talk a little bit about Japan today. Before we jump into that, just a few quick things. The first thing is I was reading about the top 10 countries to live in. I'm going to share that information with you in just a moment. Now, I have several lists here. This one was made in mid-2023 by Numbeo. That's Numbeo. You can check them out at numbeo.com. I use them to get a lot of my data and information throughout the year about what's happening in what country. Also, we have another list by the U.S. report, U.S. Best Countries Report for 2023. Of course, that's going to look a little bit different. Unfortunately, the United States is not on any of these top 10 lists. I guess that's why the expat movement is gaining steam. It's a shame, but I'm just telling you the way it is. And then there's a UN report. This is a little older. They have a list going back to 2021 and 2022. And that was kind of in the middle of COVID, wasn't it? Sort of, yeah. So 2020, 2021, less so in 2022, I think, if I remember correctly. But anyway, so I found this very interesting. Let me just jump right into this. Oh, and one other quick thing. You'll be listening to today's episode on December the 13th, which is a Monday. Excuse me, wait, I'm looking at the wrong calendar here. Let me jump back into this. Today is it will be December the 11th. Anyway, Christmas happens to fall also on a Monday, but being it's a holiday, I think we'll release that weekly episode on Tuesday the 26th. Okay, back to what I was talking about, the top 10 countries with the highest quality of life. This is the first list according to Numbeo. It was taken a few months ago, 2023. Number one, there is a tie, believe it or not. Luxembourg and the Netherlands tie for first place, followed by Iceland. A friend of mine took a vacation there about 2 years ago, said it was really nice. After that, we have Denmark and Finland. I do know one person in Denmark, and I have met a few people from Finland. I don't know if they come here to the United States to spend time during the wintertime. I never really asked them about their country in that great a detail. But then we have Switzerland, Oman, Austria, Norway, and Spain rounding up the top 10 according to Numbeo. Now, Spain is a very popular destination. I know that for expats. I would say that Spain would be the number one destination for expats according to this list. Okay. Looking at the U.S. News Best Countries Report, they lead off with Sweden, which is not even listed in the Numbeo report, followed by Norway at number 2, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Switzerland, the Netherlands again, Australia, Germany, and New Zealand. So maybe this is what Americans who have traveled abroad consider to be the best. Interesting. Sweden is number 1, but not even listed on the Numbeo report. The countries that make both reports, however, are Norway, Finland, Switzerland, and looks like Denmark and Finland. Okay, that's it. And then finally, the UN report starts out number 1 is Switzerland. Now, on these 3 lists, Switzerland is on all 3, followed by Norway, Iceland, Hong Kong, Australia, Denmark, Sweden, Ireland, which is interesting. That doesn't appear on any of the other 2 lists, Germany, and the Netherlands. So the Netherlands appears to be pretty good. That is on all 3 lists. I just wanted to share that. That doesn't have any connection with today's episode. We're talking about Japan, But I just found this information. I figured let me share it now before I forget. I think that if I had to move to one of these countries, let me just use the Numbeo report. That is the most recent, mid-2023. And of course, things always change. I don't know anything about Luxembourg or the Netherlands. Iceland, I've known people to have vacationed there. So maybe I would take... I don't know if Iceland is really my the type of climate that I would like. I could say the same about Switzerland. I guess to play it safe, maybe I would take Switzerland. Switzerland is a well-documented place, but I'm sure it costs quite a bit of money to live there. So anyway, that's just a FYI. I'm throwing that information out there. Today we're going to talk about moving to Japan. Now, Japan is one of the most modern cities, or countries, I should say, in all of Asia. And Japan is really small when you look at it on the map, but it has an incredible economy there, and it offers a much different kind of experience for people from the West especially. It has stunning landscapes, vibrant cities. They have deep-rooted traditions there, although I remember hearing stories about some of the old-timers, Japanese individuals, saying that a lot of the traditions that they had pre-World War II were gone by the conclusion of the Second World War, that the following generations were much, much different than the previous generations. I guess we can say that for just about every place that we looked at. Every generation brings new things to the table, new ideas, new ways of doing things. Not necessarily better, not necessarily worse. It's just different depending on the specific areas that we're talking about and the specific countries. But would it be challenging moving to a country like Japan? Well, about a decade ago, I met a group of Japanese businessmen. They were here in the United States to discover or to do business with some American countries and to discover whether or not they were a good fit or not. And it was a very interesting conversation we had. The Japanese people are very respectful for the most part. They have a very different culture than ours. And again, I use the word respect because, for example, how elders are treated in Asia is a lot different than how elders are treated maybe in some other countries. And I don't want to use America like this is the country where we can point to the fact that a lot of things are wrong. I know that that's the case, and I know that some of the traditions that made the United States what it was in the past are no longer maybe in play as much today. For example, I grew up in an Italian-American family, and it was instilled in us, at least with the Italian heritage, to really respect your elders. And it was more of a family-focused culture, I would say. Maybe, again, pre-World War II and after the Second World War, I think things changed a lot. But the younger generations would oftentimes be supported by the older generations that would help them get educations and live a better quality of life. And then in turn, when the younger generation became into their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and they had the financial wherewithal to support the older generations, that's exactly what they would do. For example, in my family, the younger generations, as they matured, they took care of the older generation, meaning that if they couldn't afford to do whatever, house repairs or whatever, the younger generation would take care of it, no questions asked. And it wasn't the kind of thing where they would loan money, it would just be given. And the older generations made sacrifices that enabled the younger generations to get to that place where they were. And I think that's kind of like the story that you hear when you look back at the immigration of the old times, Ellis Island, the Italians, the Irish, the different ethnic groups that came over. And Asia is a great example of that culture still existing today, where the older people have a position of respect, position of power, if you will. The younger generation is trained to also be there for family when they become older and they're no longer able to maybe care for themselves the way they were able to when they were younger. And that extends, of course, into things like finance and just actually being there. Whereas today we have more miles, I guess you would say, separating family, whereas then people would stay close to family because if the family needed them, they would be there. Anyway, that's a lot just to say that the Japanese still maintain a different type of culture than people from the West are used to seeing today. Now, as of 2023, this is interesting. Another survey found recently that Japan ranked as the 13th best country in the world to live in for quality of life. Now, we just talked about the top 10, but Japan ranked 13, so maybe if we took the top 15, maybe Japan would make all three lists from the list that I just read a few minutes ago. So as of this recording, Japan is renowned for its exceptional healthcare system, ranking third globally, and its outstanding safety standards, ranking sixth in the world. And these factors contribute to Japan's impressive life expectancy of 84 years, on par with places such as Switzerland and Liechtenstein, according to the latest World Bank data. If you're an expat, then you'll also be pleasantly surprised by the healthy lifestyle that is already a part of the Japanese culture, including eating, clean eating, regular exercise, and a stronger connection with nature. Now, when it comes to landscapes, Japan offers a diverse array of options depending on where you live. In the northernmost region, centered around the island of Hokkaido, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Hokkaido, Hokkaido probably, you can experience the mountains. They have winter sports there, whereas down in the south, they have sandy beaches in places like Okinawan Island, and the beaches are very similar to Hawaii. In fact, people say, I haven't seen it myself, but Okinawa has been a popular destination for many years. And then you can look at the mainland of Honshu, and there's the metropolitan cities there, such as Tokyo, the eastern anchor of the Tahayo Belt, it's also called, which has a population of 39 million and is accompanied by other prominent cities like Kyoto, Osaka, Kobe, and Hiroshima. Everyone recognizes that name, of course, from World War II. So you have an incredible 74 million people there out of Japan's total population of 125 million living in that region. Now we can look at things like the job market in Japan. Japan presents a wide range of job opportunities encompassing many different fields such as teaching English, for example, IT, and many others. Japanese companies highly value foreign language skills, especially English, French, Spanish, along with other languages, as they often encounter difficulties in communication. Now, I see communication as the biggest hurdle. Of course, if you're already fluent in Japanese, it's a totally different ball game for you. Then you bringing that skill over there, you probably have a lot of options. Whereas if you only know English, then of course that's going to be a hurdle. Of course, that's a hurdle no matter where you move to. If you're not moving to an English-speaking country, but of course, English is taught in the majority of the schools, foreign schools today, all over the world. I think France used to be known as the universal language, I think back around World War II, and then that was surpassed by English, and I think it's remained that way ever since. I know Spanish, of course, is very popular, but so communication is a big part of it. So if you're, let's say, an expat and you're looking for employment as maybe like a waiter or a waitress or a factory worker or a caregiver, the ability to speak English will open up a lot of doors for you. And additionally, there are prospects for expats in areas like real estate, law, advertising, finance, IT, accounting. Tokyo and Osaka and other regions of Japan are considered to be the hubs for job seekers. And many positions offer something called visa sponsorship opportunities. So in other words, you can be sponsored by a company, and the visa is what gives you the ability to remain in the country, right? As long as you have a visa, you don't have to worry about anything, no matter what country it is that you're going to. So if you're going there on a work visa or a sponsorship visa, then it makes it much easier. All the doors are open to you that would otherwise remain shut. So, but of course, there are challenges as a foreigner when you're in a different type of job market, because many companies prioritize, for example, we're talking about Japan, many companies may prioritize Japanese citizens due to language barriers and visa requirements. And so expats may need to have a work permit or a long stay visa to be able to legally work and remain in Japan. Now we can look at the cost of living in Japan. This is huge because when it comes to the cost of living, it's important to note that, like any other country, it's going to vary depending on locations. But when you compare the popular destinations around the world, the cost of living in Japan is generally lower. So let's take Tokyo, for example, where expenses are considered to be around 53% lower than those in New York City. And if you've ever lived in New York City or you're there currently, you already know that expenses there are just off the chart. My friend's daughter shares a one-bedroom apartment with two other girls. They're working for a big corporation in accounting, I believe they're in. And I think they pay about $7,000 a month for that one bedroom where they all share the rent together. So that's quite a bit of money. But for a single person, the average monthly cost of living without rent, that side of it, is estimated to be around $1,200. So we can break down some of the estimated monthly costs for a single person living in Japan. So, for example, accommodation and utilities, we have to break it down from what we would call the Japanese won to dollars. So, if you want to rent a one-bedroom apartment, that would cost approximately, let's just use US dollars because most of the people listening to this are English-speaking and understand the dollar, $770. Whereas living outside of a city center would cost around $510. The basic utilities for the apartment would range between $53 to $153. Again, these are just estimates of all your utilities together. Monthly food expenses typically fall between $289 and $481. Transportation, budgeting for transportation would include like your public transit or commuting, usually amounts between $96 to $145 per month. The internet and mobile phone, so if you want to allocate funds for internet and mobile phone services, generally that will range between $58 to $96 a month. So now for expats wanting to rent an apartment, the average monthly costs in a few cities that are commonly chosen by expats. Number one, let's look at Tokyo. That's one of the most common. A one-bedroom apartment in Tokyo would range between $945. Again, we're not using the Japanese won, we're using dollars. Between $945 and $1,155, whereas a three-bedroom apartment would cost between $2,052 and $2,508. So once you're starting to get over that $2,000 mark, we're probably looking at people. Well, I know bartenders make quite a bit of money. Servers can make quite a bit of money depending on where they are. But when you're looking at someone who's a student or somebody who, really doesn't have that type of income yet, that's getting a little bit pricey. Kyoto, Kyoto, a one-bedroom apartment would typically cost between $522 and $638, whereas a three-bedroom would range between $1,035 to $1,265. And Sapporo, the third city, one-bedroom apartment, usually priced around $279 to $341. So if it's a younger person, that is much closer to that kind of range. And when you look at these prices, you can get the idea of the type of people that you would find in these locations. Whereas the higher the price, usually the older the people that live in that region, because they're the ones that have a lifetime of savings and investing, and they can afford to live there. But Sapporo, the one-bedroom apartment, between $279 and $341. Three-bedroom apartment costing around $522 to $638. Now, an important consideration to the cost of living in Japan is internet service. It typically runs between $32 and $39 a month. So overall, the cost of living may fluctuate depending on location, but Japan does offer a more affordable lifestyle and options when you compare it to other destinations which are considered to be desirable destinations around the world. One of the things that I think people realize the older they get is if they're going to move to another country, and they're not just going to save money, they're going there to save money and enjoy at least as good a lifestyle as the location that they left, if not better. And if you think about that for yourself, why else would you leave the location that you're in? Now, I know there are times where people stay in a location too long for their financial situation. And as a result, they're burdened with debt, their cash flow is severely diminished, their savings diminished, and all of that. But if you recognize the fact that you're no longer capable of maintaining your lifestyle due to the increased cost of living, inflation, taxes, insurances, all of that combined together, then when you're making your plan, you want to be able to maintain again that decent lifestyle that you've become accustomed to while at the same time spending money. And Japan happens to be one of the places in the world that you can do this in. It's much easier doing it in a place like this, and there's several other places. We're talking about Asia right now. So I know there's quite a few Americans who are relocating there because this is where they have the best of both worlds, places like Singapore, Thailand, and places like that. Now, the less expensive cities in Japan, where the cost of living is, we just mentioned Sapporo, but it's not the only one. There's other locations that are known for their affordability, like Sawara. When it's pronounced with the Japanese accent, it sounds more like Sawara. But it's known for its affordability, and the average cost of accommodation there is only $600 a month. So Sapporo, again, we talked about that, from $279 to $341. Average monthly rent for one-bedroom apartment. Kyoto, $297 to $363. Osaka, known as the nation's kitchen, has an unbeatable cost of living, more affordable than Tokyo. The average monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment ranging from $531 to $649. And if you're a foodie, what better than being close to or in the nation's kitchen? And Kawasaki, situated between Tokyo, Yokohama, and Kawasaki, is one of the cheaper places to live. Also, the cost of living there is lower than Tokyo, and the average monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment is around $531 all the way up to $649. So it's important to keep in mind that the cost of living in Japan, like anywhere else in the world, is going to vary according to different locations, and the prices mentioned, of course, in this episode are subject to change. Maybe we can revisit some of these places next year and see how things have changed over the last 12 months. But preparation is one of the huge things that goes into an international move, and Japan is no exception. People have different motivations for wanting to move into a different country, a different culture. Maybe for some people it's work and education. Maybe for others it's personal growth and excitement and adventure. But once you understand what your motivation is for going there, then it's a lot easier to set some clear goals to help you get there. Everything is going to start with research and information, which is one of the reasons why I like to look at the cost of living in these different places, because you can compare it to where you are living today, and you can see what some of the differences might be, what some of the advantages and disadvantages may be. I think no matter where you go in the world, there's always going to be challenges because that's just the nature of the world that we live in. But with a little bit of research and understanding, I think that you can definitely make this type of move possible. Language skills can be a big one because many Japanese people, they do speak English today, but that's not everyone. Being able to speak both languages opens up a lot of doors. And I know here in the United States, there's a lot of people who are from South America, Mexico, Spanish-speaking people. Many of them are older, but many younger too, who just only know a few words in English. And there's a lot of people here in the United States that are bilingual. They speak English and they speak Spanish. But being on the other side of the coin and seeing someone of a foreign country come in, it is definitely detrimental when you can't speak the language fluently of the country that you're residing in, because that barrier between that you have with languages can be significant. Now, there are apps on your phone that you can get that will actually translate for you from one language into another, and that may be fine in a pinch, or if you're in a hotel or something like that. But just in day-to-day conversation, I would imagine that would get a little bit old after a while. I've spoken with people from Germany who were trying to learn English, Spanish-speaking people, and they knew just enough to be able to communicate, but it's hard to really connect the way you would be able to connect if you're able to speak fluently that person's language. Visa and legal requirements, of course, that's always going to be a big one. Depending on your purpose for moving, you have to, for example, navigate the Japanese visa process and research the specific type of visa you'll need to ensure that you're going to meet all of the necessary criteria. Another one, which people don't really think about sometimes, is the financial planning and how that ties into the legal requirements, because some countries require that you have a certain type of income that you can prove in order to enjoy some of the benefits of living in these countries long term. I know even here in the U.S., I've talked to people who moved here from the U.K., and one person was telling me that until they had their company established here and they were paying taxes, their employees were paying taxes, in other words, they were here to start a business, that opened more doors to them than when they were just moving here as an individual. So if they were going there with the purpose of starting a business, and you could understand why that is, because if you're bringing business into a foreign economy, then you're going to be able to create revenue for that economy and for that country, and you're going to be more welcome there. Everything's going to be easier for you. Now, of course, you can look at the other end of the spectrum where you have younger people, let's say the digital nomad, for example, and you're traveling from one country to the next. Maybe you're spending a few years there and you're seeing what it's like. And so in that respect, yeah, you are earning income, but it's not the kind of income that we were just talking about where you're opening a company, employing a lot of people, bringing tax revenue in. It's a totally different type of situation. So you have to, again, it depends on what your motivation is, what your long-term aspirations are. Whether you're at the beginning of your journey, the middle, or whether you're retiring and just looking to settle down, a lot of these things will factor into what type of visa that you'll get, how long you'll be able to stay in that country. There are people here, for example, in the United States, they're here for X number of months, and then they return to their home countries in order to satisfy the visa requirements before they're able to come back and live here again. Now, here at SDC International Shipping, let's say, for example, that you want to make the move from the United States, then we will pair you with an expert for the region that you're moving to, the country that you're moving to, someone that understands all of the different documentation that's needed because they specialize in that kind of move. And that's one of the advantages of working with an established international moving company like SDC, for example. So when we look at the different visa types, Japan offers various categories for different purposes: work, study, tourism, family reunion, and things of that nature. And then based on that, there are different documentation that you will need for your visa application. So if you're kind of stuck in that area, we'll make sure when you're ready for your move that you have all of the documentation that you need in place. So that way when you get there, there isn't any type of surprises. There is an application process, of course, that you have to go through. So you don't want to wait to the last minute in case there's any hangups or anything like that happen. All of this stuff needs to be done on the front end. Depending on what type of visa that you may require, some of them require a health check, background checks. And this is true in some way, shape, or form for any country you may be considering relocating to. Okay, I think that will do it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, please share the episode link with a friend. Share it on social media, email, wherever you happen to be. If you want more information, as always, visit our website at www.stcinternationalshipping.com. Thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for listening. Whether you're relocating within the country or moving to the other side of the world, we're here to help from start to finish. Connect with us today at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962.